All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Sierra Club Wisconsin chapter's Wolf Awareness Week. It's been quite a week already, and today is officially our Wolf Country Wednesday. My name is Amy Mueller, and I'm on our wildlife team, and I'm excited that you could join us tonight for the very special presentation. We're going to be hearing from a wonderful wolf country expert. But before we get to that, I just want to hit just a couple quick housekeeping pieces. First, as you come in and as you get settled, please make sure to mute yourself. And we will have some questions for Q&A at the end. If you can, if you think of it, you want to put it in the chat as we go, I'll refer back to that at the end. But we had a number of questions come in actually before the presentation, so we'll start there. And then we are recording this, as I mentioned, so we will be able to share this out afterward, and we'll be on the Sierra Club YouTube channel. So we've got that for reference as we go. And before we begin, Sierra Club Wisconsin chapter has the privilege and responsibility to acknowledge the Indigenous people who have called this land home for generations. This acknowledgement demonstrates our strong commitment to collaborate and partner with the sovereign tribal nations located in Wisconsin. There are now 12 tribal nations that call this land home, 11 which are federally recognized. No matter where you are in the state, you are on the ancestral land of a tribal nation. I'm joining you from the land of the Potawatomi in southeast Wisconsin. The Sierra Club Wisconsin reminds each of us to take the opportunity to learn about and appreciate the history of the land that we are on and the great historical, present, and future contributions of the Indigenous people. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce the presenter for this evening. Her name is Genevieve Adamski, and she is the wildlife specialist for the Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. She started in this role last December after completing her Master of Science in Applied Ecology from the Inland Norway University of Applied Sciences. As the daughter of two livestock farmers, she's dedicated to finding avenues of coexistence between farmers and large carnivores. And on a personal note, Genevieve is a delightful and candid presenter, and we appreciate her keeping it real and meeting with us tonight. So grateful for her time to meet with us. So with that, I will turn it over to Genevieve to start her PowerPoint and get us rolling.
Right, everyone. Thank you all for taking the time to spend your evening with me learning about some wolves here, some very special wolves in particular. I'm just gonna get this started here. Can everyone see the screen okay? Amy, I can't see you anymore, so can you say yes?
Yes, it
Working?
looks good. Yes, presented well.
Awesome possum. All right. So to get rolling here, this talk is about Maingan conservation. And for those of you that don't know, the word Maingan means wolf in Ojibwe. And I'm going to be speaking on our overall conservation efforts here at Red Cliff, but also the remarkable legacy of one wolf in particular. But just to do a little bit of adding on to that wonderful introduction that Amy just did, I also want to acknowledge Ron Nordine Jr. He's been our wildlife technician for over 9 years at Red Cliff, and all of the work that I'm presenting today is thanks to his efforts. As you can see here on my side, I just started 10 months ago at Red Cliff in their Treaty Natural Resources Department. So I am just kind of the voice to all of the hard work that has been done years before I got here. So I just wanted to say miigwech to Ron and the staff that came before me that walked so I could run. Again, if you're unfamiliar with Red Cliff, we are way up here in the northernmost corner of Wisconsin, right on the shores of Lake Superior. Within the Red Cliff Treaty Natural Resources Department, I am in the Wildlife Department. You can kind of imagine us. So we are, Red Cliff is a sovereign tribal nation, and they have rights to operate within their own land, and similar to how the Wisconsin DNR operates. So if you can imagine our Natural Resources Department similar to the DNR, that's just how we operate. And so we are like our own entire conservation department within this one area. And we work with a lot of beings outside of Maingan. Right now, a lot of our focus is on carnivores. That includes large and small carnivores. But we also do work with the smaller beings, such as amphibians and hopefully bats. I would really like to get into that pretty soon here. But also white-tailed deer and CWD monitoring. So, but the reason you're all here today, of course, is to learn about a very special relative, Maingan, and a little bit of background onto Red Cliff's Maingan monitoring project. It began in 2010 with the goal of understanding and protecting local Maingan families. And this is important because to Ojibwe people, I'm not a tribal member. I would just like to fully disclose that. Um, Red Cliff is a part of the Ojibwe Nation, and within the creation story, the wolf plays a very significant role. And since I'm not a tribal member, I'm not really going to get in depth into that because I don't feel that's my place to share that story. But essentially, what it boils down to is that wolf and Maingan, the same thing, are pretty much, considered brother to a lot of the Ojibwe people. That has to do with the role of the wolf in the creation story. And so when Red Cliff began this monitoring program, they wanted to create a plan that would assist and protect these relatives, these deer relatives, in an increasingly dominated human landscape. And one of the elders in Red Cliff likes to make the joke that you can't manage your brother. So a wolf management plan doesn't really make sense, but we can protect the brother, right? So that's the name of this plan that is basing a lot of our research off of. I am currently working on an updated version because this last version is now almost 10 years old, and a lot of things have changed. The state of Wisconsin has come out with their own management plan. So with that, just rolling with the times and trying to update with the newest and most relevant information on Maingan. But getting into that, to protect Maingan, we need to understand Maingan. And that comes with a lot of scientific methodologies. And maybe you've seen this graphic before in different contexts, but I just edited a bit here. And I'll get more in depth with all the different scientific methodologies in a bit, but we can't do any of that unless we get people on board. And that involves working with people who don't necessarily like wolves. And that's okay. That is a different stakeholder group and a different group of people that it is reality that they are there and they're trying to make a livelihood. So we're just trying to find some median ground. And thanks to Sierra Club, we were actually able to create a flyer this year on non-lethal abatement methods for wolves and livestock. I'll get a little bit more into that into the talk, but essentially we're just trying to help farmers protect their livestock without having to lethally remove wolves. But also, in addition to working with other stakeholder groups, we work with conservation groups doing general outreach and talks like this. Because creating a relationship with Maingan takes stories, and that can't be done just behind a piece of paper and reading about, how you can protect your livestock or your pets. It's face-to-face stories, and so that's what I hope for you all to get out of today with the story of W813. But getting in a little bit more into the scientific techniques, we do a large variety of monitoring of the local Maingan families. We do camera traps, track surveys in cooperation with the Wisconsin DNR. We also do howl surveys, which is kind of just a fun way of playing Marco Polo with the wolves. And then those are the hands-off methods that don't usually disturb them, but then we do hands-on methods, which are a little more disruptive to their lives just for a little while, but they pay off so much because the information that those beings share with us after these events is incredible. So collaring and captures is one of those, and den checks. And you can see here up in this corner, that is a wolf den, and that is one of our technicians being lowered into the wolf den. And you can imagine that that is a disruptive event, but there is a recent study that came out from Voyager's Wolf Project, if you're unfamiliar with them. They did a study comparing wolf packs that had den checks and didn't have den checks by researchers, and the pup survivability was about the same. It didn't seem to have any negative impact on the pups surviving and making it through the year. So that is encouraging to know, because we don't want to cause harm when we're studying these beings because it is a traumatic event for them. We want to be aware of that. But I love this image in particular. This is W813. This is the wolf that we're going to be talking about today. And this one image shows three different methods that we use. This is a camera trap. She is also shown here wearing her collar, so we can cross-reference the collar data with this camera image to be able to see that that is her here at this time, and she's with two smaller wolves, and those are her pups from the year. And so all of that information put together, these little snippets, these little snapshots of the wolves' lives tell us so much about their territory size, their pack health, and their pup survival rates. And in some cases, they also help us understand poaching and killing events, which is why we need all hands on deck for these conservation methods. There is the social side of conservation, which includes education and outreach and partnerships. And then there's the hard biology science side of conservation. And one method is not going to protect the wolves. It's all of them together, and we're all stronger together. So I just like to remind people of that. And that brings us to W813. So if you're unfamiliar with her, she is a very special wolf. She has been, I don't want to give it away, actually. I'm getting ahead of myself, but this is the wolf that we'll be talking about today. She has been a study partner at Red Cliff for 10 years, and she just has a remarkable story. She met an untimely end last December, and we didn't want to have her death be in vain. So we're telling her story to help build relationships with this one wolf in particular, but hopefully other wolves. So Oma Mayan is mother in Ojibwe, and she was the matriarch of the Echo Valley Pack. That is the outline here in blue. That was about the estimated area of her pack territory. She had been collared twice. And that was in 10 years, over the course of 10 years. And she had quite a few puppies, a remarkable number, which again, I'm going to get ahead of myself here, but I'll tell you her story. But here are the two different collar types. So when she was first collared in 2014, she was fitted with a VHF collar, which stands for very high frequency. And that's a radio collar. And they don't give locations based on satellite data. You have to go out in the field and actually collect the data. Whereas the GPS collar that she was refitted with in 2021 is pretty much just sending locations back and forth to the satellite. And it tells us so much more about this being. You can see here in those years where she had the VHF collar on, she only had 341 locations, which still tells us a lot about her life and where she was spending a majority of her time. But look at this 2 years where she was fitted with that GPS collar, and you can see almost 3,000 locations. And it just gives us so much more information about where she was raising her family, where she was hunting, and how she was perhaps avoiding roads or certain properties. It's just an incredible wealth of knowledge that she shared with us, not once, but twice. So with all of those methods that I was talking about earlier, plus the collars, now I can kind of piece together a story about her life. And just a little disclaimer, I will be taking some artistic liberties. It's a little difficult to tell exactly what happened in her life before she was collared. So I'm using all of the science we know about wolves to be able to kind of give you a more comprehensive understanding of her life. But just be aware that maybe the first 4 years of her life were a little more ad lib than the latter years where she was collared. So in 2010, this is when the earliest she could have been born based on her aging. And she was a pup that year. She would have been born in April. That's usually when wolves have their babies in Wisconsin. I like having her birth date be in 2010 because I find it rather poetic that that is the year that Red Cliff Treaty Natural Resources began their wolf monitoring program. Now, we don't know if she was born in Echo Valley or to another family. That will remain a mystery forever. We'll never know. But you can see here in this wheel, this is how her first year of life would have gone. She would have been born deaf and blind,
Abel
less than a
Abdul.
pound, barely emerging from a den in May. And then she would have moved her life around the wheel for that first year, weaned off milk and eating meat by June, being moved to rendezvous sites, which are almost like so a wolf den that they're born in is usually a hole in the ground or a crevice where they can secure the puppies. Rendezvous sites are sometimes more open, and that's just like a puppy playground where they just leave the puppies with adults or babysitters, and they're a little bit more free for the puppies to move around and play because the dens get a little crowded once everyone starts teething. um, but by September, she would have been following her adults around on short trips in the territory and settling in new rendezvous sites. And by mid-October, she would have been traveling with her adults full time. So you can think of that in the context of this year. The puppies that were born in 2024 in Wisconsin, at this time already in October, are moving around with their adults and moving about their territories. And by December of that same year, she would have mostly reached fully grown size. They're a little bit skinnier and they have nicer teeth than the adults in their pack, but for all intensive reasons, they have reached adulthood. So in 2011, she would have been a yearling, 1 year old, and her role in the pack would have been to help her parents raise the New Year's pups by babysitting. I know we all have to do it, even wolves. But she also would have learned how to hunt, how to play, and defend her territory alongside her parents and siblings. And then in 2012 to 2013, that's 1 to 3 years old is usually when wolves begin their dispersal activities, which means they leave their natal pack territory and go find another pack. And if you remember what I said, where we didn't know for sure if she was born in Echo Valley or not, I just think it adds a bit of fun to the story to say that she is not from Echo Valley and she dispersed and found her way to the Bayfield Peninsula and her new home in Echo Valley. But something very interesting in those same 2 years is that in 2012 and 2013, Wisconsin hosted their first and second annual wolf hunt. And there are very interesting scientific papers about this, where if a breeding wolf is killed, the pups and the remaining members of the pack actually kind of form somewhat of a power vacuum and things kind of get squirrely. Sometimes there will be struggles for power within the pack if someone wants to become a breeder. Sometimes the teenagers will just ditch and go find their own territories. So there's a good chance that in 2012 or 2013, her natal pack, her birth pack, one of the breeding members, one of her parents could have been killed in that hunt, and she would have started her dispersal to find her new family because her family had been disrupted by that hunt. And then moving into 2014, that was the year that she was first captured and collared. This was done by the Wisconsin DNR. They captured her in June and they fitted her with her first collar. And they weren't sure at the time, but later in July, a camera trap image showed her with 4 puppies. And that confirmed that she was a mother and the breeder of the Echo Valley pack. And that's just an incredible thing to have is a collared breeding wolf because she will tell us so much more about the information of that pack. So that was a real gift. And that was also the year that Wisconsin hosted its third wolf hunt. Now in 2015, we have her VHF collar on. The Wisconsin DNR would perform radio telemetry flyovers with airplanes. So they had an antenna out on an airplane and they would pick up her locations from her collar with that antenna. They also did some groundwork. We also, within Red Cliff, had an antenna and we would collect some locations. So you can see here on the map that those dots are where she would have been located 40 times throughout the year. And one fun thing I like to see here is she made her way over to Sand Island at one point during that year. That was likely during the winter, during an ice bridge event, which is getting more and more sparse up in our neighborhood. All right, and then in 2016, there were 43 VHF locations recorded, very similarly to what I just told you. And she likely would have mothered another litter of pups. This video here is not her. This is another wolf that we recorded, but it just shows how this wolf is moving her puppies from one den to another den. And you can just see that activity being done here, and the puppies going back in the den and falling in. And then in 2017, we got some really great camera footage of her with 7 other members in that pack in Echo Valley. That is a large pack for Wisconsin. And I don't know if you can see in that bottom video down here, there is a limping wolf. We believe that wolf had 3 paws and was able to survive with 3 paws for quite a while. And that's not a rarity, that's not uncommon with wolves. They're very tenacious and they can make it through a lot of physical difficulty. And then in 2018, she would have been anywhere from 6 to 8 years old based on our estimates, and that qualified her for elder status because the average age for wolves in Wisconsin is only 6 to 8 years. So she would have been, if she was a person, she would have probably been getting ready for retirement and enjoying her life, but she was still going strong. She had a pup the year earlier who we collared that year, and we named him EV2. That was most likely her son, and he was fitted with a GPS collar. So that's that more updated collar I was telling y'all about. And thanks to EV2's GPS collar data, he showed us that the Echo Valley pack was actually eating livestock carcasses. And this is a unique problem where farmers will leave out carcasses instead of properly disposing of them in compost or burying them. And they set off a smell. You'll attract any sort of wildlife with that, whether it be carnivores or birds, or even, you'll get chipmunks sometimes eating carcasses, which is not a pretty picture. But what that then does is those wild animals begin to associate livestock with food. And that's not good because when there's no more carcasses left out, then those carnivores may look around and be wondering where the food is at, and they might decide to attack a live livestock, which leads to what are called depredations. And that is when a wild animal kills a livestock animal. So USDA Wildlife Services offers non-lethal deterrent methods currently because wolves are listed as an endangered species. And you can see here, that's some flattery on the fence and a fox light. And those are just visual deterrents because wolves are neophobic, which means they're afraid of new things in their environment. So even just the waving around of flags or a flashing light that goes off randomly will be enough to deter wolves for a little while. The best thing to deter wolves is a good fence. And I mean like not an electric fence, but a mesh wire fence with squares in it, which I can get into more detail if you'd like. But I see I'm getting short on time here. So in 2020, that was the year of the pandemic, and we weren't able to get out in the field as much, but we were able to perform a den check, and we found 7 puppies in that den, which is a lot of puppies. So she was still going strong. Even as an elder, she was having lots of puppies. And then in 2021, that was when Wisconsin held its 4th wolf hunt. However, she survived 4 wolf hunts. This is her image of her being recaptured later that year, and you can see her teeth are so worn down. Like she's missing her big canines there. She's even missing her front teeth. She has lived a long life, and that's how we age wolves when they're in the wild, is by taking a look at their teeth. So even at this point in 2021, she was a grand old lady. And if the video already played, she was just caught on camera relaxing in a meadow because you should. When you're that old, you should take time to relax. And then in 2022, in February, one of her sons who was collared was on his own dispersal journey to find his own pack and family, and he was killed. Our collars will notify us when an animal has died, and we were able to go down there, or the team at the time was able to go down and locate his body, and they found him with a gunshot wound in the middle of the woods. So he wasn't anywhere near a farm, and someone just decided to shoot him. And this was illegal because wolves were back on the endangered species list. But on a brighter note, she had a very special daughter at this time, and we called her EV4. She had not had that name yet, but I'll get to her in a bit. And in 2023, she would have been around 13 years old. In the summer of that year, we captured her daughter, EV400, and we fit her with a GPS collar. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But she also was, her wolf W813 was captured on camera in September at a bear bait site with her teenagers. And the bear hunter shared the images with us, which we're very grateful for. And that was the last time we saw her. We got a call. This was actually about 5 days after I started at the wildlife department, and we got a call that a collared wolf had been killed in the Echo Valley territory. And that's how her life ended. You can, I don't really want to focus too much on her death because I feel like that takes away from her life and the amazing stories and the gifts she's been given us. But if you're curious on that, there's lots of information on that. You can just look up Bayfield Wolf killed, but that's not what I'm here to focus on because she had an amazing legacy. She was incredibly old. She had tons of puppies, and one of those puppies has found her way all the way up to Canada. She is currently in Manitoba. Her collar is still working, and over the course of a year, she traveled over 1,000 miles to make her way all the way up north. So we see from her collar locations that she's most likely settling down or joining a new path, which is very exciting. So I don't really have time to play this film, but if you'd like to take a screenshot or a picture of this, there's a really, really beautiful film done by Wolves of Douglas County on W813 and what her life and death meant for our department. I'll just give you a couple more seconds here to take a picture of that if you want. And I can go back to this too during the questions. So I'm going to move on here. So this might leave you all feeling a little helpless. Like we've studied this incredible creature for 10 years, and yet she was still taken by fear. So what can we all do? If you own pets, the simplest thing you can do is leash your dogs when you're walking in the woods. I don't know if you can tell from this camera image, this is a coyote being chased by an unleashed dog. Dogs chase things, that's normal, but the woods, when you go to the woods, that is some other being's home. And it is your job as a good wildlife steward to make sure that your pets are being respectful. And also, please always clean up your pet waste because wolves and dogs are very closely related. They're both Canis lupus. One is Canis lupus familiaris, that's dogs. Their disease transmission is it's like they have the same diseases. So parvovirus, distemper, kennel cough, all of those things that might be transmitted from feces, wolves can pick up if you don't clean that up when your dog goes to the bathroom in the woods. So that's my spiel on that. If any of you are livestock producers, you can kind of from what I spoke of earlier, put up some of those deterrents, or you can ask Amy or Wendy for this wonderful non-lethal methods flyer that we have. But the number one thing is to reduce attractants and implement deterrents. Fencing is so incredibly important, but it is also so incredibly expensive. So it's very, very important to just protect your livestock before it becomes a huge issue. And finally, if you're just a general outdoor enthusiast, I will ask you to go indoors and vote because wolf policy and wolf protection and all wildlife policy and protection is usually on the ballot. So just inform yourselves and vote as needed. One thing I will say is the individual who shot W813 is sitting on the Conservation Congress. He's a delegate for Bayfield County. He was elected for that, and anybody can run. But if you don't want to run, there are also spring hearings where people can vote on conservation issues and anything like that in the state of Wisconsin. And those usually occur in April. So keep an eye on that. You can just Google Wisconsin Conservation Congress to learn more. But if you want to make decisions on how you think that our wildlife should be protected or not protected, I highly encourage you to get involved with the Conservation Congress. And with that, I just want to say miigwech, which means thank you. And I'm happy to take any questions now.
All right. Thank you so much for that. So, one of the things I got to hear you talk about at one point, and I'm going to ask you to share. I know you grew up on a farm, and you had maybe sort of jokingly, but maybe not so jokingly, inferred you had your own secret weapon against depredations on the farm. And I was hoping maybe you could share that with us.
Yes. So I grew up on an organic grazing farm in Northeast Wisconsin. My parents have since transitioned to beef because they lost their free labor. That was me and my brother because we went off to college. And beef is easier to raise than dairy cattle. But we had a dispersing wolf actually show up on our farm in 2019. And we have a beautiful picture of it, which I realize is not in this presentation and I should put it in there. But it was just looking at our cows. It was one wolf. The cows were way bigger than the wolf. And the way we deterred that wolf was by sending my mother out with a camera to take pictures of the wolf. And that that poor wolf just took off running and never came back again. And I'm not saying that's an easy solution. I recognize that livestock producers have real struggles and real emotional tolls when it comes to depredations in wolves. But just being aware and bringing your livestock in after you see even a sign of wolves might help. We have had to date no losses on our farm from wolves, but we're also just on the edge of wolf country. We are getting regular dispersals from the Menominee Reservation on our farm, which is very cool to see. We love seeing wolves on our farm, but the key is keeping an eye on your livestock and disposing of your carcasses.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I think it's great that you have that dual perspective of having, uh, being raised on a farm and can also talk when it comes to the biology and ecology of wolves. So that's wonderful to have and to hear from. There is a question in the chat regarding the active case around Wolf 813. Can you share with us just the status of where that's at?
Yep, it is still under investigation. It's been under investigation since December, and I just really don't want to share any more than that because I don't want to jeopardize the integrity of the investigation. But as far as we know, that's all we know.
Sure. No, thank you for that. I know that we will continue to keep everyone posted on that as we also wait to hear. One of the questions that came in prior to your presentation that I think would be interesting to hear is, what is the most surprising fact that you've learned about wolves on your journey?
Yeah. So I can go back to that slide maybe here and share with y'all. I also just got a low battery notification. So if I randomly disappear, that's why. Let's go to this slide here about W813. The coolest fact that I have learned about wolves, and of course it doesn't go to the right one, is that wolves and ravens actually have what is called a symbiotic relationship in biology. And what that means is, simplified terms is that they play and they're friends and they help each other in nature. They will, ravens can identify where carcasses are because they can fly. They have a bird's eye view of the forest and they're able to go to those carcasses and make their raven noises. And the wolves are used to those noises and they'll actually follow ravens to go find carcasses that have been left by perhaps a roadkill or a bobcat or another being. So it's really cool. And you can see it. I wish the video was playing here. There we go. You can see they'll play together. There's lots of video documentation, not just from wolves in Wisconsin, but wolves in Yellowstone, where ravens and wolves will play together. So it's just, I love that relationship.
Yeah, that makes so much sense because they're out in the for they spend their days together. They do kind of mutually benefit one another. So that's cool. Another question, and I think you touched on Wolf 813's daughter that has so kind of now famously dispersed um, after her passing. And I think it was getting some play on social media recently from Voyager's Wolf Project and whatnot. Very cool that she went all that way across Wisconsin, Minnesota, up through International Falls, and then all the way up into Canada, into Manitoba. What signs are you seeing that are indicating that she is settling, that maybe she's finding a new wolf family there?
That's a good question. So she's wearing her collar, and that collar will send us those little dot locations that we see on the map. And when a wolf is dispersing, they'll kind of go in like a little ant trail. Sometimes they'll stick around an area for a little while if they think they're going to settle down. And it's hard to tell. You just have to kind of wait and watch. And if they stick to an area for more than a couple months, it's kind of safe to say that they might have found a mate or been welcomed into a pack as a subordinate member. It's right. Oh,
Oh, rats, we might have lost her there quick. Sorry for that. We'll see if she rejoins. I know we've got a lot of good questions, and if it doesn't work out, we will certainly follow up with the answers to the questions that we have in the chat currently and that we received prior to the presentation uh, via email. And we certainly will be sharing the recording as well. I just saw that pop in. The recording will be on the Sierra Club Wisconsin chapter's YouTube page, and we'll be sharing out the links. So let's see if Genevieve is able to jump back in. But otherwise, in the meantime, I will just give her a minute and I will say, certainly on behalf of the Sierra Club, thank you all for joining us. We have some fun-filled activities coming up for Wolf Awareness Week for the remainder of the week. We have theater preview Thursday tomorrow. We have Fun with Wolves on Friday, which is a little bit of fun take on wolves. And certainly we have a wolf story Saturday. So please do check out all of the things for that. We have daily emails going out, and it will be on all of the Sierra Club Wisconsin socials. And let's see, I don't know if she's able to jump back in. So with that, I think we can stand for just one more moment and see if she jumps in. Oh, here she is. She's coming back. Hold on, let's get her back in. So I know we have some questions.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, everybody.
No, I don't worry. I gave my little commercial for the rest of the week, so we're all good.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah, my laptop died and I have no excuse other than my laptop died, but I'm on my phone now. So
That's
we get the
okay.
kind of casual, more more personable phone FaceTime call now.
No problem. Well, no, that happens to the best of us. We do have a question in the chat, and I think this is one that maybe a lot of folks might have. You mentioned the term camera trap, and we're just wondering maybe you could describe what that is and how that's created.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So, a camera trap is the scientific way of referring to a trail camera. If you're familiar with those, you can buy them like from Reconnex. They have a couple that are really nice. And what you do with that is it's pretty much just a camera that's motion censored that you lock to a tree and you leave it in the woods. And we have a grid of those within the Red Cliff community of, I believe it's 43 or 46. And they're placed at mile increments. And those cameras are always on and they're always recording. They're not usually video. We'll put those out in special instances. But that when a wolf walks in front of the camera, it's triggered and it takes a picture and it is trapped. Camera trap. So it's a non-invasive survey technique that we use, and we can just tell how many wolves are in an area at the time, what they're doing, if they have pups with them, even just a little image, picture's worth 1,000 words. So those are wonderful tools to have.
Oh, thank you for that. And then one other question that we have is, and I'm not sure how much you're at liberty to share, but are there a certain number of collared wolves that you're monitoring now on behalf of Red Cliff, or are there a certain number of tribal packs that you're keeping an eye on in the area? I'm not sure what you can share, but just curious what kind
Yeah,
of monitoring you have going on right now.
I can share how many packs we're looking at. So we have two packs that immediately use the land on the Red Cliff Community Reservation. So that's the Mishkwabikong pack, which is Ojibwe for Red Cliff, and then the Echo Valley pack, or what's left of them. And then we also, because of ceded territory rights, also monitor adjacent packs. So that includes the Little Sioux River pack, the Polish pack, which is kind of a mystery pack to a lot of us. We don't know if they're hanging out or not. And then Twin Lakes. And those all packs kind of use the land up in the peninsula. And that's just within what we can drive to and from in a day. That's worth it pretty much. We would love to monitor the whole Northwoods if we could. But as of right now, it's just mainly those 3 to 5 packs or 4 to 5 packs, excuse me, that we're looking at.
Oh, that's cool. That's great to hear. Here's another great question. Through all of your studies and through looking at all of these photos that are generated on the grid, are you able to, when you look at a photo, discern or what do you look for, I guess, to distinguish maybe male wolves versus female wolves, or maybe even try to age, the wolf that you're looking at?
Oh, it's so tricky. It's really hard to tell the difference between a male and a female wolf just from a camera image. Sometimes in the spring, you can see the nipples that are swollen on the females from when they're lactating and feeding puppies, but that's a very small window of a whole year from when you're looking at, who is who. The best way we can tell if it's a male or a female is if they are wearing a collar, and then we can cross-reference that with GPS data and say, oh, that is wolf 400, and we know that is a female. But sometimes size works, but camera images are really hard. Sometimes it's even hard to tell the difference between a wolf and a coyote in some images because of scale, and how close or far away they are from the camera image. So it's difficult, but we can try.
No, that makes sense. I think you being able to look at that color data obviously just amplifies how you use all of those techniques together to put all the pieces together of the puzzle. So that makes sense. No, thank you for that. We just got another question. Can you explain the regurgitating process?
Ooh, who asked that? I think someone has likes gore and stuff, but what it is, it's just the puppies going up. The adults will go to a feeding site and gorge themselves and feed themselves, and they'll come back to the puppies with big bellies. And the puppies will go on up to them and just give them tons of kisses and lick the inside of their mouth and kind of just get the adults to throw up. And their stomach is full of fresh kill, right? So they throw up, and puppies have, I don't even know what to call it, but delicious regurgitated meat pretty much. And it's not the most glamorous thing, but nature isn't always glamorous. So
No, that makes sense. And fortunately, we are past the dinner hour, hopefully for most everyone. So
yeah.
it's cool. We can cover that kind of stuff. Um, One of the questions is, are you working in conjunction with the DNR on some of the things that you're doing there for Red Cliff as well?
Mhm. Yeah, we do our best to share with the DNR. There are some issues with data sharing and all of that because we sometimes, it's complicated. We like cooperating with the DNR, and we recognize that wolves don't see our political boundaries. They don't know when they've stepped outside of our monitoring and management zones. So cooperation with the DNR includes track surveys. They train us actually to do those track surveys, and we submit data to them on that. But as far as collar data goes, as of right now, we don't have an agreement. We're kind of working together. We're putting out feelers, but it all comes down to just data sharing agreements, and that's for the IT side of things. I will not be bothered with that, but that's for the higher ups to work out. I would love to share the data if it can be protected and used appropriately.
No, that makes total sense. And then kind of on that same note, are you working with cooperatively with other tribes that are also doing similar monitoring?
Yeah, there's a really great organization called NAFWIS, or Native American Fish and Wildlife Society. And within that, there is a wolf working group, and that is encompassing the whole of what is now called the United States, all of the tribal nations within that area. And we work together on collaborating and sharing different methodologies and research techniques for wolves specifically. So once every couple of months, a bunch of researchers and biologists get together and just kind of share what we've learned, what works, what doesn't work, issues we're running into, and things to be aware of. So that collaboration and those relationships have been really valuable for me as a beginning professional in this field. So yeah, we work as much as we can with other nations. Yeah.
Well, that's great to hear. On the Sierra Club side, a lot of advocacy work. So this question sort of makes me smile. Just curious, I know and appreciate so much that Red Cliff has a wolf protection plan, and I think has been very candid about how much they value, Maingan and wolf species there. The question that came in on the chat is, are you working at all or voicing to a larger audience, perhaps like the Interior Secretary, or nationally with U.S. Fish and Wildlife around protection status, or things you can do, I guess, to leverage the platform that you have there with Red Cliff to sort of educate government agencies.
Mhm. We are doing our best. Our wildlife department is 2.5 people. I say half because we share a technician with the fisheries department. Um, we have such limited time. That is our biggest resource. And as much as we want to influence and work with policymakers, I got to get out in the field at some point and color a wolf. So as much as it would be ideal, it's just a resource issue. And I think those agencies would be open to those discussions, and we're doing our best with what limited work and time we have. But for now, until we get a policy advocate or analyst, that's very limited, as much as we can do.
No, that makes sense, and appreciate all that you are doing. Certainly. You mentioned, I know you've been doing some field work. And what have you been out in the field doing? Like over the summer, have you been working with students or getting out there and seeing wolves firsthand, getting away from a computer for yourself for a little bit?
Yes, the answer to all of that is yes. We work with students. We work with Bayfield. Their high school has an alternate education program. So some of those students actually got to shadow us for a coyote capture, which was very exciting for them. So they got to see how that process works. We also work with Northland College and bring their students out and show them our capture techniques and methods. And they come along with us on our trap check days. And for just this summer in general, going out in the field, like our regular schedule is set traps, check traps, answer emails, apply for grants, do outreach. There's a lot. And the kind of joke in the biology world is when you finally land a full-time position, a majority of your time is spent in the office instead of out in the field. And that has reigned true. But I'm very, very lucky that I get to spend at even 30% of my time outside. I'm grateful for that. But that's why we have our wonderful technician, Ron, who is a majority of his position is out in the field, and he just does spectacular work. And I'm very jealous of him sometimes when I'm answering emails on nice sunny days. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, thank you for all that you're doing, both at the computer and in the field, and certainly to Ron as well. We appreciated connecting with him for Mayangan Monday earlier this week. Um, I think that's about where we're at with Q&A. So I certainly appreciate the presentation. I know that your email was at the end of the PowerPoint, so please to everyone on the meeting here. If you have questions, certainly feel free to reach out to myself, to Genevieve, and we will do our best to answer your question. We do appreciate the support of being here and celebrating Wolf Awareness Week and honoring the legacy of Wolf 813 and learning from her and championing her daughter as she takes up new residence in Canada, and remembering what we've learned from her. So with that, Genevieve, thank you so much. I know time is so valuable to you there, and it just means the world for you to speak with our group. Everyone is very appreciative. I don't know if you can see the chat, but definitely thank you so much. People have definitely appreciated the presentation and your candid answers this evening. So thank you so much.
well, thank you all. Thanks for taking the time to learn something today. I hope you all learned something, and just thanks for spending your evening with me learning about wolves.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that, I will close it out. I'll say good night and thank you all so much. Have a great rest of the week.